Please join me in welcome Doug Rogers.
Thank you, Andy. Good morning, everybody. And Andy, I want to thank you for already costing me money. I never told my son I was going to pay him for this meeting. Money to me anyway, a couple of weeks ago. So I was making my travel arrangements and on a Sunday, and I came downstairs for this convention, and I came downstairs, and my wife was in the kitchen reading our Sunday paper, the Star-Ledger from New Jersey. And she says to me, she's flipping through, and what's she looking at? She's looking at, of course, guess what? The FSI coupon inserts. And she goes, you know what I hate about coupons? I said, wait a minute, hold right there. I mean, I'm heading to a coupon convention. I'm about to get some real-time, fresh, anecdotal consumer insight right in my very own kitchen. I said, what do you hate about coupons? And she goes, she looks at me like I'm an idiot, which she usually looks at me that way. And she says, well, what I hate about coupons is I hate when they make you buy two. I go, what do you mean? What's wrong with buying two? What do you mean you hate that? She goes, well, like this, Wesson oil, for example. I have to buy 2 big bottles of Wesson oil in order to get some savings. So I said, well, what's wrong with that? And she says, well, I don't need 2 bottles of Wesson oil. I said, Michelle. I called her Michelle 3 times because that's her name. I said, Michelle, let me tell you something, Miss Smarty Pants, selfish consumer. It's not about what you need. It's not about you. Somewhere in the hinterland of America, there's a great company called ConAgra Foods, and inside this nice business, there's a very fine young man sitting in a modestly decorated cubicle. He's a product manager. Okay? Nice guy, funny guy. 28-year-old graduate of Northwestern Kellogg. And guess what? Got a girlfriend, wants to get married soon. You know, he's got a couple loans still left from Northwestern. And of course, he's got his eye on the BMW 3 Series. Guess what he needs? He needs to sell more Wesson oil. So she says, well, I don't really care. Because I'm not going to use more Wesson oil. I don't want 2 bottles of Wesson oil. I said, Michelle, oh boy, let me tell you a little something about marketing, okay? There's a little thing called trade-up strategy. Hello, apparently you haven't heard of this. That is that if you buy something, more of something, even though you don't want it or need it, you're going to end up using more of it. That's what's called trade-up strategy. She said, well, I'm not going to cook more because I have 2 big bottles of Wesson oil in my cabinet. I said, oh, yes, you are. And she looked at me and said, oh, no, I won't. Now, there's something about at least my wife, because I try to be dominant sometimes, say, oh, yes, you are. And when she does this, no, I won't. There's like the uppercut, the shoulder, and I'm done. I'm dust. And I'm thinking to myself, these consumers, they think they can do whatever the hell they want. I mean, it's crazy, right? But all kidding aside, except for the fact that my wife never bought 2 bottles of Wesson oil, the fact is that's what this is all about. It's not about us. It's about others. It's about being them and they focus, not about me, I, or self-focus. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I began to do research, and what I found was that, now it's not just my personal opinion. The fact is that there's a preponderance of evidence that supports this notion. This is not just some abstract moral or ethical code because our upbringing said you should behave a certain way. This is all about results and outcomes, because that's what we're all here for. We're here to get better. And I actually had a catchier title than this. It was a shorter, catchier title, but some bastard stole it from me. Now, the funny thing about Charlie Sheen, which, I don't know about you, but this may seem like beating this to death, but I don't know. This is a train wreck that still interests me, so I'm just going to keep talking about it. The funny thing about his concept of winning is that, in a way, Charlie Sheen, he really was right. You're sitting there as a coupon professional, as a marketing professional, and you're saying, thank you very much. What am I going to do with that? And how in the heck does that relate to couponing? Well, We said there was a common thread that went through all of this and brought it all together, and it's group dynamics. We are social animals. The same primitive group dynamics that provide the foundation for human ethics and interpersonal behaviors also provide a natural tendency towards how we do most things in our lives. We get together. We form groups. We assemble. Because that's who we are. We're social animals. And we figured out a long time ago that we're going to have better end results if we work together. So go back to the earliest groups, back to what the anthropologists have studied. We figured out in the truest Darwinian sense of survival that if we work together, if we hunt together, gather together, defend together, we have a much better chance of achieving our #1 outcome in life, survival, than if we do it independently. If we nitpick each other, we have a much better, statistically higher probable chance of ridding each other of disease-carrying parasites than if we did it on our own. Kind of a grotesque example, but true. I mean, here's a classic example, right? There's no way one caveman could have carried back his whole leg all by himself. Dinosaurs didn't live at the same time as the caveman. It doesn't matter. And by the way, I realize this is a horrible picture quality. You know, clearly back in the days of cavemen, they did not have good advanced, photographic technology. This was obviously taken by some caveman, crappy cell phone camera. People join groups because they want not just survival, but they want other physical comforts. They want luxuries. They want higher order emotional benefits, a sense of inclusion, belonging, connection, and validation. And that's why people join groups. That's why everything we do it in a group. On the other hand, there's a requisite to joining these groups. Several requisites. Number one, there's always an initiation to any group. Always an initiation. Whether it's a fraternity or whether it's a loyalty group. Loyalty program. There's an initiation. You have to pay a fee. Maybe you have to take a test. Maybe you have to give a survey. Maybe you have information you have to give. Maybe you have to give this loyalty program your email address in order to be able to reap the benefits of savings. There's always a requisite. There's always the requirement of obedience and conformity. That if you're not engaged in like behavior, like-minded behavior, then you're not engaged in good for the group behavior. So you need to abide by the rules of the group, and you need to conform with the rules of the group, or you're asked to leave. So there's a group called the Church of Latter-day Saints, a group called the Mormons. They have a group called Brigham Young University. They have a group called the BYU basketball team. Look at the BYU basketball team this year, led by a guy named Jimmer Fredette. What a great name like Jimmer. I wanted to change my name to Jimmer Rogers. That's what I want it to be. But it's Jimmer Fredette. He owns it. And they also had a guy on this team, which was the best team they've had ever, heading to the Final Four probably in all likelihood this year, a guy by the name of Brandon Davies. 6'9" power forward. Hadn't had a guy like this in their group ever before. But guess what happened? He violated his code. So he had a requisite. He signed an honor code of behavior. But then he was not conforming to it, and he disobeyed it by admitting to having sexual relations with his girlfriend, which, by the way, would have been celebrated in most other groups. In Charlie Sheen's group, they would have carried him around on his shoulders. But in the BYU group, that was bad for the group behavior. So knowing short term they were going to hurt their chances of winning, despite that, they still asked him to leave the group because it was bad for the group behavior. Guess what their thinking is? And by the way, this isn't a religious commentary. I'm a cafeteria Catholic myself with no personal opinion about Mormonism. But the state of Utah, 60% Mormons, actually happens to have, I looked this up, the lowest or second lowest rate, incidence, of every single major chronic disease out of all 50 states. Maybe their honor code realizes it's all about self-preservation and good for the group behavior. Look, as marketeers, right, we were trained and born and raised and drilled and skilled and schooled into understanding individual human consumer psychology. And it makes sense, right? I need to understand how she thinks so that I can understand how I can influence that thinking with either a message and or some sort of an incentive stimulus so that I can change that thinking, influence that thinking, and influence the end behavior. And that's what we should be doing constantly all the time as we spend most of our days doing it. But what we all have to understand is that constantly underlying that, most if not all of that, is this sense, and it's not always visible, of group dynamics that are also influencing how the consumer thinks, how she thinks and how she behaves. So here's a couple of case study examples. We all know that in the social network space, that Facebook was not the first to market. That Facebook was second or third behind MySpace, behind Friendster. And how do we know this? We saw the movie. That's how I figured it out. Facebook was third to market according to the movie, and of course we know in marketing that how does a third to market player become first to market, because now Facebook has way more members and is still growing, and MySpace is losing members. Well, it has to have a significant competitive advantage of some sort, right? Technological or otherwise. Well, there have been many theories and many conclusions about why Facebook really emerged and was successful. Well, you know, they picked the right target audience. They went to colleges, older, cooler, hipper target audience, so it was better for expansion. Or that it was an instantaneous target audience for expansion, college campuses. Or they said, well, they had better technological navigational capabilities built into Facebook than MySpace. All of that is probably true, I'm sure. I like the concept of how they were positioned. MySpace, just listen to the name, MySpace, a place for freedom, for individual freedom. A place where you can come and see me and see how different I am from you. And so who flocked there? Artists and musicians and folks that really wanted to express themselves. If I'm going to invite you in, look at me, look how different I am. I can customize my space any way I want so that it looks different from your space. Well, I'm going to go to Facebook. Facebook is completely the opposite. Facebook is not about me, come visit me. Facebook is, I'm interested in all of you. In a weird kind of squirrely Zuckerberg way, that's true. But maybe that's where it started, but it's all about you, it's about them, it's about I want to belong, join this group, like this group, connect with this group. You've got 150 friends, I only have 100, I need to get 50 more friends, I need to belong and be included in a bigger group. That's my instinctive nature, is to be included and be part of this group. Well, Facebook is so bland looking. Oh my gosh, all of these sites look exactly the same. Exactly. Conformity, obedience. That's one of the requisites. That's why it's success. You can't look different. You don't want to look different. You want to be the same. You want to be part of the group. It's about connectivity, others, and them. It's not about me and how different I am. And that's why they're successful. They say that this company, Groupon, is the most successful new company ever, I've heard people say, because of its trajectory of revenue and profitability in such a short period of time as a startup. From 1 million members, excuse me, to 40 million members, I think, in 1 year. The revenue, you can't even track it, you can't even measure it because it's so exponentially successful. Oh, I haven't seen the last quarter, and they got their work cut out for them as an aside in terms of continuing to get these boutiques. But nevertheless, 1 year under their belt, Google was willing to lay down, how much? $6 billion, which they rejected, which I would have taken. But look at the common theme of these groups and all their followers. Living Social doing pretty well, right? Who's got funding, they're on the air now, they're advertising. Okay, just saw a commercial this morning. Collective buying power, Living Social, join the crowd for savings, right? There's strength in numbers, there's power in numbers. Buy with me, let's get it together. You see what's drawing consumers? At work is that instinctive, natural desire to know that my outcomes can be improved if I'm part of something bigger than just one. That is driving both of these phenomena.